Um, Ayin Dalet. If the wife of a Chava left the wife of an Amaretz grinding in her house, if the mill stopped, everything in the house is tummy. If the mill did not stop, nothing in the house is tummy except for those items in the area that she can stretch out her hand and touch. Even if there were two women there, in either case, everything in the house is tummy, since the one grinds and one examines. These are the words of Rabbi Meir. But the Gekkolim say nothing in the house is tummy except for those items in the area that can stretch out their hand and touch. If someone leaves an Amaretz in the house to guard it, and when he sees those who enter and those who leave, food, drink, and open earthenware vessels are tame. For the bed, the seats, the sealed earthenware vessels are tahor. But if he cannot see those who enter and those who have leave, and even the Amaretz guard has to be carried, for even if he is bound, everything is tame. If the tax collectors entered into the house, everything in the house is tummy. If there is an idolater with them, they are believed to say, "We have not entered," but they are not believed to say, "We have entered and we have not touched." If thieves enter the house, nothing in the house is tummy except for those items in the area where the thieves walked. And what do they render tummy? The food, the drinks, the open earthenware vessels, but the beds, the seats, and the sealed earthenware vessels are tahor. If there is an idolater or woman with them, everything in the house is tummy. Okay.
Okay. זין, המניח אס כליו בחלון של עוד יין. So somebody leaves his kalim in this in the window. Hold on, let me just see how we translated it.
If one place closed in a cubby hole of the bathhouse.
A cubby hole in the bathhouse. Thank you very much. All right, that's how that's it. Okay, so I guess then as now you want to go to the bathhouse, you want to put your clothes somewhere. Yeah, so they must have had a little place for safekeeping. Now the question is if it's an open window where you're just like trusting nobody's going to take anything out of the windows, or if it's a thing that's actually got a little door and a lock. Okay, so Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah Metaher, he says, don't worry about it. Nobody's touching anyone else's clothes in the bathhouse. You don't have to think about that. Or chosam. You have to. It has to be locked up, or you have to seal it in some way. Or achi yaseh siman. Or else, if you can't lock the cubby, then you have to fold it in a special way, or leave a little piece of dust or hair or something in place that you can recognize. If somebody has been touching your clothing, you'll see if it's been moved. So if you come back and find that it hasn't moved, then you can assume that it's towel. But if not, you have to assume it's tummy that if you've left it alone. Somebody else may have been messing with it. Hamaniach is kelav migas zo legas haba. Now here's let's say this is a kohen. The first case that we bring over here now is a kohen who has been from one year to another. He was wearing certain clothes to prepare his wine in tahara. This is obviously truma wine. Okay, so he keeps it from one year to another, and it kind of makes sense that you would have. It's kind of like having an apron, because I imagine when you're preparing wine, things get messy. So
Hmm.
yeah, you have some clothes you don't mind getting messy, but on the other hand, they also have to be tahor. Okay, because he doesn't want to make himself tummy. He doesn't want to make his wine tummy. So he takes them, stores them, puts them away for and for the next year. Now he comes the next year, and is he concerned? Should he be concerned that some Am Haaretz came and touched them in the meantime? So says the Mishnah, Kelev Tohorin, you don't have to worry, because even Am Haaretz know that Kohanim eat things in Tara, and they've got truma, and they're respectful of that. So an Amaret isn't going to mess with the clothing of a Kohen. However, the Israel, if you're talking about a Stam Yisrael who's preparing his wine from year to year, and he wants to prepare it Batara, he cannot claim that his clothing has not become tameh unless he says, listen, from the time I put it away in such a way that I knew that it was going to remain tahor. In other words, I took measures to protect those clothes, and therefore he can be relied on to say that it's tahor. I mean, it's not that he can be relied on, but he can say that no Amaretz came and touched it in the meantime. Because I mean, we are talking here about a chaver Israel, who put his stuff away from year to year. He's got to when he puts it away, he's got to have in mind that he's putting it in a protected place. Otherwise, when we don't know that an Amaritz didn't come
Right.
and mess with it. Okay, Ches Misha Tahor. So there was a guy, a Kohen, who is this a Kohen? Yes, a Kohen Tahor who was busy eating truma. And he said, "Oh, that was such a great meal." And he says, and at this point, he's made up his mind that he's finished his meal. Okay, and now half an hour later, he says, I actually wouldn't mind having another little bite. Or he comes back into the kitchen and looks at the stuff on the plate, and you know how it is with stuff in the kitchen. You always got to have another taste. Rabbi Yehuda Matayr, he says, look, he was tower for truma before. Nothing happened in between. Um, right? He says, so Rabbi Yehuda says, oh, he's fine. Shederch tamein portion mimenu, because you don't have to worry that anybody tamei touched him. Because in general, if people of Tame will stay away from him. They know that he's a Kohen and he's Tahor and whatever. So he's fine. However, Chachamim Metamin, they say no. Once he's taken off his attention from the meal, and he's no longer considered Tahor for Truma. He has to stop eating Truma. He's not allowed to do it anymore because maybe somebody touched him. Hayu Yadav Tohoros. Now, what happens it's a similar case? We're talking about his hands are tahor, because now even if the kohen himself has been to mikveh in the morning, and he's had harav shemesh, and now he wants to come and eat his truma, he's got to do natilas yadayim, and that's why we do natilas yadayim for bread. Is exactly for this reason, to remind the kohanim that when they eat truma, they've got to do natilas yadayim, because their hands have got a secondary tumah. So his hands were tahor. He was eating. And he again decided to stop eating. He says, look, I know my hands did not become tame. So we're talking about a case where there are no other people around, and nobody could
Right.
have touched him to make him tame. And he says, I know for sure my hands did not become tame, but he took his mind off the meal. Yadav tameos. As soon as he has hesech hadas, even Rabbi Yehuda, who in the beginning of the Mishnah said that in the case of his body, we trust him to say that he's still tahor, but his hands, nope, sorry, sheyadaim askanios, because hands do things that you don't even realize about. Quick little scratch over here, quick little touch over there. You're not watching what's happening. And that's simply what Chazal will go there, is that your hands, as soon as you take your attention off them, they become tame. Okay. Tess Haisha shenichnasa lahotzi pas laoni. So a poor guy comes to the door and says, "Please, ma'am, can I have some food?" She says, "Sure, I'll go and get you something." But yatzas, and she comes out. Now, this is the Ashes Kohen we're talking about. So she goes into the house to get some bread. And she sees that this oni, this chutzpah dika oni, has walked in, and he's now standing next to or he's standing next. While she wasn't watching, there was an oven outside, and there were fresh baked loaves of truma bread. And now she's got to be concerned. Did this ani, who's an Amaretz presumably, did he touch the truma bread while he was waiting for her to come back with something for him? Okay, similar case. So she was busy cooking, and she went out the room and came back and found her friend, Ashes Amaretz, and her friend was coming and stirring the coals underneath her pot. Perfectly innocent. You're allowed to stir the coals under the pot. I mean, she's not touching the pot, right? Everything's okay. Yeah, but what was she doing? What was she doing even near the pot? That's the question now in her mind. Rabbi Akiva Matame, he says in both of these cases, this is we have to suspect that the Amaretz actually touched the food, not just that the Ashes Amaretz was stirring the coals, but that she used that as cover to take a look at what was in the pot and check what was in the pot. The Chachamim Matarin, Chachamim are not so suspicious. Amar Rabbi Elazar ben Pila. V'chi mipnei ma Rabbi Akiva matamech v'chacham matzarin. I said, so Rabbi Akiva, Elazar ben Pila asks the question on everyone's mind: why? What's the reasoning behind Rabbi Akiva versus Chachamim over here? So it says, so Chachamim honestly don't need a reason because they can just say, we don't suspect it. We didn't see them touching anything. We don't have to suspect it. Yes, but Rabbi Akiva says, Mipnei nashim garganios hein. He says, don't say this out too loud, but he says, because women are gluttonous. Because women are gluttonous, shehi chashuda legalos es shel chaverta. That she wants to know what her friend is cooking. Leda mahi mevasheles. Now, interestingly, Kahati makes a point over here that there are some Mefarshim who say we're being medayek on this, and that this is not talking about both cases. Rabbi Akiva gave his reason over here. So according to Rabbi Elazar ben Pila, at least, Rabbi Akiva is only talking about the second case, only where the pot was closed, right? Because if the pot was cooking open, then she doesn't have to touch anything. All she has to do is look inside, and she can see what's cooking. Okay.
All right.
And when it comes to the ani, well, he's not talking about a woman. He's just talking about a guy who's standing next to the kikaros. So it appears that according to these Mefarshim, that it's dafka about the second case that Rabbi Akiva says that it's tameh, but there's no reason to be choshesh that the ani himself was messing around with the food.
Yeah.
At any rate, as is usual, I would say the halacha is going to follow the chachamim here. Okay, let's go back to
Hey, Betty. If one said I touch this object, but I do not know whether it's Tamei or Tahor, or I touch one of the objects, but I do not know which of the two I touched, Rabbi Kiva rules in Tamei, but the Tamei rules in Tahor. Rabbi Yossi rules him Tamei in all cases, but rules him Tahor in the case of the path, in case of the path, or if that is the way for people to walk, but that is the way not the way to touch. Regarding two paths, one tummy and one tahor, if one walked on one of them and then prepared tahoros and they were eaten, he would sprinkle once and again immersed and purified himself, and then walked on the second path and prepared tahoros. They are tahor. If the first tahoros are still extant, then these and those are suspended. If he did not purify himself in the interim, his first is suspended and the second should be burned. Regarding a sheretz and a frog in the public domain, if someone touched one of them and prepared taros and they were eaten, and the immersed touched the second object and prepared taharos, these taharos are tahor. If the first taharos are extant, these and those are suspended. If he did not immerse in the interim, the first taharos are suspended, and the second taharos should be burned.
okay.
Right.
Para
We're on para.
Zain Ches.
If someone puts away a barrel so that it should not break, or he turned it over on its rim to let it dry, if he intended to fill with it, it is valid. For he himself, where he intended to use it to transport the sanctified water, it is disqualified. If someone clears away shards from inside the trough so that it will hold more water, it is valid. But if he does so that they should not obstruct him when he sprinkles, the water is disqualified. If someone had the water on his shoulder and he issued a ruling, or he showed the way to others or killed a snake or a scorpion, and he took food to store it, it is disqualified. If he took food in order to eat, the water is valid. If the snake or scorpion was instructing him, it's valid. Said Rabbi Yehuda, this is the rule. But anything that is considered a different activity, whether he stops or does not stop, he is disqualified. But something that is not considered a different activity, if he stops it, it's qualified, but if he does not stop, it's valid. If one entrusts his water to a tummy person, it's invalid. But if he entrusted it to a towel person, it is valid. But Eliezer says, even if he entrusted it to a tummy person, it is valid, even if the owner does not perform on a different activity.
Okay.
Hey.
Oh, hello, Stalin Gimel.
Okay. If the cabinet is standing in the doorway open to the outside and there is tumah inside the cabinet, the house remains tahor. If there is tumah in the house, whatever is inside the cabinet, it becomes tameh, because it's the way of tumah to exit, but not the way of tumah to enter. If its wheel extends no more than 3 fingerprints beyond the basket, and the wheel contains tumah,
Wait, hold on. Which
page,
we're in Gimel.
Gimel, right?
Yeah.
Okay. If its wheel extends no more than 3 fingerprints beyond the basket and the wheel contains tumor
Wait,
that is
no,
beneath,
no, no. We're not in the same place. Are you in Orhalos?
yeah, oh, it's Dalet Gimel, correct?
Yeah, I mean, what? Make Okay, just go ahead. Maybe you've got some stuff in brackets there that I'm not seeing in the Mishnah itself. Go, just read it again.
The cabinet is standing in the doorway, open to
Okay.
the outside, and there is
Yes.
tumor inside the cabinet. The house remains tahor. If there is tumor in the house, whatever is inside the cabinet becomes tameh, because it's the way of the tumor to exit, but it's not the way of the tumor to enter.
Yes. Carry on. Sorry. Okay. My bad.
If its wheel extends no more than 3 fingerprints beyond the basket, and the wheel contains tumor that is beneath the ceiling beams of a house the house remains tahor. When does this ruling apply? When there is a space of 1 cubic handbreadth in the wheel. Now the wheel is not removable and the cabinet is large. An oven whose opening is vented outdoors is located inside a house and its pallbearers pass over the opening. But Shammai says everything becomes tamei, and Vasila says the oven becomes tamei, but the house remains tahor. Akiva says even the oven remains tahor. There is an opening between the lower story and the upper story of a house that has been covered by a pot. The pot has a crack large enough for liquid to seep in. And Ben Shammai says everything in the house becomes tamei. Basil says the pot becomes tamei, but the upper story remains tahor. And Rebbe Kiva says even the pot remains tahor.
Right.
Okay. And Monachos.
Yeah.
Okay, here we go. That's Zion. No communal offerings require leaning except the bull which comes from any of the commandments and the he goat designated to be sent to Azal. Rabbi Shimon says even the he goats for idolatry. All offerings of individuals require leaning except for the Bekor offering, the Misa offering, and the Pesach offering. An heir performs leaning and brings libations and makes the Tamora exchange. All must perform leaning except for a deaf mute, an imbecile, a minor, a blind man, a non-Jew, a slave, an agent, and a woman. Leaning is considered the remainder of the precept. It is done on the head with 2 hands. In the place where the leaning is performed, the animal is slaughtered, and the leaning immediately precedes the slaughtering. There is a stringency to the right of leaning over the right of waving, a stringency to the right of waving over the right of leaning. One may perform waving on behalf of all the fellow owners, but one may not lean on behalf of all the fellow owners. The stringency of waving is that the waving applies both to the individual and communal offerings while living and when slaughtered, while the living matter and the non-living matter, which is not the case with leaning. Okay,
Okay.
on to the Dharam. Dharam. But all right, let me see. Kestet. But the netter of a willow or a divorcee shall stand against her. How? This is the general rule. If any woman has entered into her own authority to even 1 hour, he cannot revoke her neder. There are 9 Naros where Nadar stand: a Bulgaris who is an orphan, and a Nara who became a Bulgaris and is an orphan, and a Mara who has not become a Bulgaris and is an orphan, a Bulgaris whose father died, a Nara who became a Bulgaris and her father died, a Nara who has not become a Bulgaris and her father died, a Nara whose father died, and after her father's death she became a Bulgaris, a Bulgaris whose father is living, a Nara who became a Bulgaris and whose father is living. Rabbi Yehuda says also, if one is married of his minor daughter and she became widowed, divorced, and returned to him, she is still in Nara. If a woman said, go on my benefit regarding my father or your father if I work for your benefit, or go on my benefit for you if I work for the benefit of father or your father, this he can revoke. Okay. And tomorrow we'll start Nazir.
We need to do Yud as well.
I left that one out? Oh, I'm sorry.
Did you do Yud Aleph Yud?
Yud Aleph, right?
You
All
need
right.
to do, no. So Yud Aleph we're doing tomorrow, but hold on. Oh wait. Oh, sorry. Beg your pardon. I'm like a little distracted. So you're in Yud base, right? You finished just after Yud
Base
Aleph.
right now.
Yeah. So we just got to do Yud base tomorrow, and then we start Nazir.
Nazir. Okay.
Okay.
All right. And we have Salah. Okay. Gimel Zion. If one makes dough from wheat and rice, if he has the taste of cereal, it is liable to challah. And one fulfills one's obligation with it on the Pesach. But if it is not the taste of cereal, it is not liable to challah, and one does not fulfill one's obligation with it on Pesach. If one takes leaven out of dough from which challah has not been taken and puts it into dough from which challah has been taken, if he provides from elsewhere, he takes challah according to calculations, but not if one he takes one challah for the whole. Likewise, if gathered olives were mixed up with Nikov olives, gathered grapes with gleaners grapes, and if he can buy from elsewhere, he takes according to calculation. But if not, he takes Truma and Truma Misa for the whole, and the rest Misa and Misa Sheni according to calculations.
Okay, that's it.
Okay, that's it.
All
Okay.
right.
Have a great day.
Wonderful day. Good week.
I hope so.
Okay.
Maybe I'll get back to shul again. I haven't been there all week. So.
Okay, feel good.